Oh, yeah.
Bless and love, my lords. Welcome to another live interview powered by Redlion. I'm joined here today by our co-host Dudley and our esteemed guest Luca Netz from the Pudgy Penguin community. How's it going, gentlemen? How are you?
Hey, GM. All's looking nice and fine. Just finished our. So let's.
The Pudgy Penguins.
Yeah, what a song. Get out.
Hey, Luca, how are you? How's it going?
Hey, sorry about that. I keep getting rugged. So if for some reason it seems like Twitter's breaking on me today, um, so I keep hearing you guys, and then it ends up just going dead. So if for
Oh shit. Classic Twitter, man.
yeah,
Very nice to meet you. Thank you for coming to our show, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Everything is good. We are chilling. It's a little bit late here in Europe, so I'm getting ready for this interview. It's nice and vibey.
I'm excited to be on.
All right, so let's start a little bit with your story. Tell us if you want a little bit about yourself, how you came into the scene, how you found crypto and NFTs. If you want a little bit about yourself, how did you start your journey?
Yeah, the crypto story is a little bit of an interesting one. My brother is like a complete computer engineer, supercomputer nerd, and one day in 2016 I had made my first couple buckaroonies, and he was like, "We need to start mining." And so we bought a bunch of 1080 Ti's, um, set up a bunch of mining rigs in our room. I basically took all the money I made at that point and spent it on 1080 Ti's. We built the rigs. I fell in love. I was like, okay, yeah, this is totally makes sense to me. It instantly clicked. Did the 2017 bear market. That was really tough because I had kind of made life-changing money before my life had really changed. And then I kind of bag held it all to zero. And then I was waiting aimlessly every day, checking coin market cap for the market to come back. Eventually it did. Did really well there. And then when NFTs came around, this was right around COVID time. So I had spent way too much of my free time starting to collect things like sports cards, and I started to like actually try to invest in fine art rather than just art that I liked, which was kind of what I was buying up until that point. And then I was running out of wall space. I remember this vividly. My mom came and said I had ordered a Kobe Bryant, a couple Kobe Bryant jerseys because he had just passed, uh, and she was like, "You have no more wall space for this. Where are you going to put it?" And so I was like, "Oh." I didn't even think about wall space. I wasn't even factoring that in. Uh, and it seemed like I didn't have any more room to collect the things that I wanted. And so one day I'm just in a Discord chat and somebody says, "Hey, like check out these NFTs." I go down the rabbit hole. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing." And then that same group chat, somebody brings up PFP NFTs. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing." I think the rest is history.
What were the first NFTs pitched to you? The first collection before the PFPs that you saw? What was it? You remember?
Yeah, my first ever NFT in general was a one of one Ferocious piece, which I
Oh, that's
hold.
very nice.
Yeah,
That's very nice to pop your cherry.
yeah, it's a piece I hold close to home. And my first ever PFP NFT was a Pudgy Penguin, and so that's kind of how it all
Oh.
came full circle.
You mentioned Kobe dying and you collecting stuff back then, and this is around the time you first heard about NFTs, like around January, would you say Q1 of 2020?
Yeah, I would say that's about right.
Hmm. And you immediately found the Pudgy Penguin community since the start?
No, I was really just ferocious high end art. It wasn't
Hmm.
until summer of 2021 did I get into PFPs. I did some Top Shot. Got absolutely crushed and
Uh,
wrecked on Top Shot.
oh
Uh,
shit, you came in the wrong time. I was in it super early from the beta, so it was good for me, but I can feel for you, man. It went really bad since then.
Yeah, I got in early, so like I was able to see the moon. I just kept buying as it was mooning. So, not being a good trader there. I just like things, so I was buying like buzzer beaters and a bunch of things that didn't matter. I thought moments mattered when in reality, I think the biggest thing with Top Shot is there really wasn't any real clear clarity to me as to like what I should buy and what I shouldn't. So I was just buying like posters and buzzer beaters, but seemed to be a dud.
Yeah. Well, it's disappointing how they overprinted the project, and like the collections have no connection to the game. So this is where I was a little bit disappointed. But I hope they bring it back to life, and yeah, they seem to be taking good steps there. So let's see. My faith is not completely gone on that.
Let's hope.
So for Pudgy Penguins, why don't you go ahead and educate us? And for those who are listening and don't know, how did you experience the project, and how did the project start and continue going? And what were the obstacles that the community overcame together? Why don't you give us like a little TLDR from your perspective?
Yeah, so Pudgy Penguins was started in August of 2021 or July of, actually, off the top of my head, I'm actually blanking. It's one of the two. I bought it like early August, right before it took off. I think August was when its huge run up kind of happened. It was started by a group of kids, first time entrepreneurs, kind of just catching on to a trend. One of them had some experience in launching an NFT project in the past. When I was looking for a PFP NFT, a Pudgy Penguin came across my timeline, and I thought to myself, oh, this is exactly what I was looking for, because I was looking for a universal PFP, one that could identify and resonate with everyone. And when I bought in, I kind of fell in love immediately. The first couple of days I was in the Discord, kind of doing the back and forth. Then it has its monster run. It's featured in the New York Times. I stand by this statement, but I really believe that Pudgy Penguins played a huge role into making the space what it is today. I think it was like the first project to ever have like a massive run in a couple days, and then I think that kind of kicked off On One Force and a bunch of other projects. NFTs weren't running the way that they were running until Pudgy Penguin kind of had its run, and then that kind of
Actually, that is a little bit truth. You just reminded me that when Pudgy Penguins came out, like the floor exploded immediately to, I don't know, or very fast in like a few days. It was, I don't know, did it reach up to 20 ETH? I cannot remember. What was it? Do you remember how it went?
it was like 4 ETH, but it minted at
Mm-hmm.
0.03. So it went
Mm-hmm.
from like point 0, and it like went even as low as like I think 0.01, 0.02.
Mm-hmm.
And so NFT hadn't seen a run like that where a project basically goes from point zero 0.03 Ethereum to 4 ETH in a week. Like it was the first project to really do that at like a mass volume scale where thousands and thousands of ETH every day were being traded. Probably at one point tens of thousands of ETH. There's probably a
Mm-hmm.
moment or a day or two where at least 10,000 ETH was traded. And so it was really fascinating because it's a lot of people's first PFP, right? Or first NFT that they ever bought. It has this like historical significance that I believe you just can't replicate. You can't just buy that. Or in my case, I did. But, typically when people ask me, why did I buy Pudgy Penguins? Well, there's a lot of variables. One is the community. One is the magic and the IP. I really believe it's the best penguin IP that the world's ever seen. But there's also a historical significance and a history that is not something you can just say, I'm going to create a project, I'm going to raise $100 million and try to replicate what they did. Because that historical part is not to be underestimated, especially in crypto and NFTs. I think crypto has shown that historical significance matters, as well as NFTs, right? I mean, that's the whole thesis behind CryptoPunks, right?
And
so
what do you think drove all of that? Why did people click so fast with the Penguins? And what did drive all that mania and all that price? And what do you think was the catalyst?
I actually think this is a great question. This is where I believe to answer this question, I think, is to give you a little bit of a vague answer, but one that I believe is true nonetheless, which is Pudgy Penguins has a magic to it. And I can't explain it, nor do I think other people can explain it. I think it's just something that is. And why it happened the way it happened, I don't know, right? There was plenty of projects minting during that time. There was plenty of things kind of going on. But this magic is something that I've been trying to harness since I took over, and something that I'm really leaning into, which I believe is just the strength of the IP. And so when you look at the Pudgy Penguins launch, like with the exception of CryptoKitties, but those weren't really like PFPs, like maybe there's a couple, but by a recognition standpoint, Pudgy Penguins was the first cute IP to really gain traction in NFT. And I think the magic, if you were to really ask me like where certain things are derived, I think part of that is don't underestimate the category and the angle that Pudgy Penguins leads in, which is this cute and inclusive, fun and funny, happy type of category in the space that I believe is super small today, but I think 5 years from now is going to dominate the NFT sphere and ecosystem. And so why did it happen the way that it did? I don't know. But what I do know and what I do think is responsible is there's this magic. You know, if you really look at a Pudgy Penguin, it's a really, really good PFP. I would argue one of the best. Like I just personal preference, I think it's a top 3 PFP, just the way it's positioned, the way it sits, the way that it looks, it's round, it fills up the entire like profile picture image. There's a lot of variables at play, timing being one of them, but I think at its core, no matter how many ways you try to twist it or try to figure out why it happened the way that it happened, I think at its core is there's something magical about the Pudgy Penguin. It's the name, it's the ethos, it's the fact that it was like the first of its kind in this very new space, and one that is so obvious in the real world. Like cute IP permeates the real world. I mean, the real world is dominated by cute IP. I mean, you know, when you look at the pie of IP in the real world, maybe 10% of popular IPs fall into the cool and exclusive and, you know, avant-garde category. And then the other 90%, you know, maybe another 10% goes somewhere else. And then the other 80% is really cute, right? And so I think there's an angle here. Obviously, volume and metrics and traders at that time, there was a lot of just hype. And so those things obviously played a role. But there's a lot of projects that didn't do what Pudgy Penguins did. And if you were to ask me, why did Pudgy Penguins do what it did in August of 2021 versus all the other projects that were around? And I believe because there's a magic there. There's something in the name, something in the IP, something in the brand, something that clicks in people's minds that I don't think other projects have. And so, or at least very few have. I would actually argue there's probably about 3 others in the space that I think have that magic.
To summarize it, you're saying magic and history. And so what is historic about it, according to you? What is the history that Pudgy brought to the scene?
Well, I think the history is like, why is it where it is today? I think it's history. Why it happened in August 2021, I think is because of magic. But I think what happened in August of 2021 that is Pudgy Penguins today, right? And so when I look at it from my perspective, when you look at historical NFTs, I mean, there's a couple. There's CryptoPunks for obvious reasons. First PFP, 10K PFP that kind of shaped the whole industry and ecosystem. You have Bored Apes that kind of trailblazed the first club. and leaned into the narrative of aping in, which was a very crypto-centric narrative. And then you have Pudgy Penguins that kind of kicked off the whole cute meta and this fun and happy and meme culture in NFTs that I think, everybody has kind of since copied, but it was the first iteration of that. And that to me is historic. Is it the first cute PFP on the chain? Probably not. By definition, no. Is it the first one that mattered? Yes. And it's still the leader in that category. And so, and the history behind Pudgy Penguins, I mean, it's phenomenal, all the way down to us purchasing it and that being, the beginnings of a comeback story. I mean, you look at historically significant PFPs, I don't think there's more than 3 PFPs that are more historically significant than Pudgy Penguins. If you just look at the lore and how that run kind of shaped summer of 2021, how we bought it, how we took it over, how we brought it back, and all the things in between, it's easily a top 3 historical PFP in my opinion.
Before we zoom into that story over there, which is very interesting, let me take you a little back. You mentioned you started mining Bitcoin and in 2016. So I'm guessing you entered the space quite early, and also NFTs since 2020. So what differences do you see in yourself, the way you uh, you interacted with the space differently in 2016? What are the differences in your mentality, in your philosophy since 2016 until today? What are the things you came into the space thinking one way and you ended up realizing it's the other way?
Yeah, so in 2016, I think it was still really new. And it was kind of like a risky bet. And it was like, okay, this makes complete sense, but like we don't know if it's going to work. If it does, the upside is huge. If it doesn't, it is what it is. So I think just my conviction was different back then. I think I was not in a position to take the risk that I could have afforded to take. And so today I'm all in. Like I have a completely
Would you
different
say you
approach.
understand risk differently maybe nowadays?
Yeah, well, I also think the risk is different, right? Like I think
Yeah.
now crypto undeniably is just too big to fail. Like I think it failing is off of the board. I don't think it fails now. I don't think NFTs fail. I don't think crypto fails. I think it unequivocally is going to win. I mean, so much so I sacrificed my entire life to build and work in this space because my conviction is just too strong here. Because I think the writing on the wall. I mean, the moment came and passed where they could have shut it down, they could have blocked it. Now it's just too big. There's no stopping it. So it quite literally is inevitable. And so for me, I'd rather be on the right side of history than try to be a contrarian. And being on the right side of history always has seemed to pay off a lot bigger than not being on the right side.
Yes, I completely agree. NFTs and crypto, definitely my conviction is as strong, and I believe it's the future. However, I read an article recently shared by Arad, I think, and it was the first article that ever not shook my conviction, but gave me a few question marks and things to think about. The article, to summarize it, was something like every protest has like a concession, and then um, uh, sorry, to bring it better, it brings up parallels like in the music industry, where the protest was being the pirated music, and then the solution was the subscription music streaming services, but it took like 15 years to get there. So he brings up parallels between that and the economic system, and that was the first good argument about crypto not being like this utopian web crypto anarchist movement that we think about sometimes romantically, maybe even foolishly. Um, But I don't know. My conviction remains strong, but that was the only thing that made me think a little bit about it in a different terms. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I guess I'd have to kind of read the article to kind of get an opinion. But
Mm.
I mean, there's a
Maybe I didn't
contrarian.
describe it very well.
Yeah, there's a contrarian point to everything, right? I think I just believe in the power of the people. I really do. And being able to send money and to own things digitally, like that seems like where the future is going, and it just seems like a basic human right. Like if I buy something online, it shouldn't mean anything less than if I were to buy something in the physical world. I still bought it. I should own it. It should be mine. And so I think there's something there, right? Somebody. I mean, I grew up on video games. I was playing video games ever since I remember. I know that's the future. Technology is obviously where the world is going. It's kind of embedding itself into everyday life in ways that honestly I didn't even think I didn't even imagine to be, we for us to be so technologically advanced today. And so from my perspective, I sometimes you have to take a bet or some really good advice that somebody gave me. And it actually did really well for me in the bull market. And I'll share it for the space because I think it's really good advice. And so the advice that was given to me about 2.5 years ago is somebody told me, they said, Luca, to get really, I was day trading at the time. I mean, I had like a little moment where I was still doing my businesses, but I just fell in love with the stock market and the infinite money machine that was trading stocks and crypto. A rabbit hole we won't discuss. I was actually really good at it, but they basically said, this was one of the reasons that kind of took me off. They were like, wealth is made on a few high conviction bets. And it's not about trading things repeatedly a couple times every single day. It's really about believing in something and making a sizable bet in that direction. And so what I used to do prior to that is I used to say, oh, I know AMD is the future, or I know Nvidia is the future, or I know Amazon is the future. But I would allocate disproportionately to my beliefs. I would be like, okay, I'm going to throw 2% of my net worth in this. But if I unequivocally believe in something, I have to show conviction. And when he told me that, I kind of readjusted my trading strategy or my investing strategy. And I started to make a lot more concentrated bets in fewer places. So instead of putting 100 grand in Amazon, I'd put $1 million. And that changed my financial landscape in a really big way. I made a lot more money than I could have ever imagined in the bull run, both in the stock market and in the crypto run. And I really attributed it to that, right? There were certain coins that I bought that I was so convicted on. One was, I'll give you guys an interesting thesis. When the whole metaverse craze was happening, to render metaverses is really hard. I mean, it takes a lot of computing power. So if the thesis is the metaverse is the future, right? Well, there's a token called Render that Peter uses for his studio. He's used it for the last 3 years. They don't know crypto over there, but they use the token to render things quickly. So I thought to myself, I was like, oh, well, if metaverse is the thesis, then eventually people are going to realize that's a lot of rendering power needed. And so if Peter, a crypto novice or somebody who knows nothing about crypto, is using this token for his studio to render things quickly, there's clearly something here. So typically in the past, I probably would have put 50 grand or made a low conviction bet in that direction. But I was so convinced that that was the narrative. So I went all in on render token, thing like 8x. And I was like, oh my God, right? And so few high conviction bets, things that you really believe in. Obviously, you have to do the right research. You have to manage capital accordingly. But that's also kind of the thesis to Pudgy Penguins. I believed in Pudgy Penguins so much. I actually ended up buying it for a lot cheaper than what we were expecting to buy it for. But we were expecting to put a ton of money into this. I mean, we already kind of did. But from our standpoint, it was just like, okay, we believe NFTs are the future. I believe Web3 is the future. And here you have a golden egg of an asset that's just sitting, being neglected, waiting for somebody to come in and operate it at a high level. And so I had to
How
do
how,
it.
how did that deal go down? How did you guys come into that deal, and what were the circumstances at the time?
So the circumstances were pretty rough. I think the community at this point was really fed up. There were some major players in the community trying to buy the project. Things were getting spicy online and internally. And again, there's a lot of variables that I think kind of aligned our purchase of Pudgy Penguins. I won't kind of dive into each of them. I'll save that for a later date. But one of the really interesting universal alignments was I was leaving Sedona. I had made the bid and it had gotten some engagement, but I had fallen on deaf ears. I'd messaged Cole, nothing had happened. About 10 days before I had gone to Sedona, I'm an introvert, so I don't leave the house much. In my perfect world, I would be in my room, my office, and maybe, visit a friend once a month. But in an ideal world, that's how I would live my life. The few times, I think probably since I've moved to Miami, I've been on a boat 3 times. The most recent time I was on a boat was 10 days before I left to Sedona. I was on a boat with 8 guys. One of those guys was a guy I'd never met before. His name was Levi. And Levi was Cole's childhood best friend. What a coincidence, right? And so 2 days after I made the bid, he had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I saw that bid. Are you serious about it?" And I was like, "You know me. Why would I tweet it if I wasn't serious about it?" He was like, "Oh, did you know Cole is my childhood best friend?" I was like, "You're kidding me." He's like, "Yeah, he doesn't think you're serious." I'm like, "Oh, I'm totally serious." And then boom, he connects me with Cole and we get the deal done. And that deal took way too long. I actually, just speaking openly, I really thought it was not going to go through. Up until the last day when my lawyer finally said, "Hey, they budged on this term." There was one term that was holding the whole thing up. It would have been done 2 months earlier. But there was one term.
Can you share what was that term?
The term was they basically wanted me to incur all of the liability of any previous action. So I was like, I'm not buying this thing for 2.5.
That's a heavy one.
Yeah, I was like,
That's a heavy pill. That's a heavy one to swallow. That's how. That's such a dirty thing to ask.
yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what the intentions there were, but I basically was like, guys, I'm not spending $2.5 million.
What could have been the intention?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm not going to spend that type of money just for somebody to sue me for something I didn't do, right? Like that was just like it was not.
Is the amount public?
Yeah, it was 750 ETH at the legitimate Pico top. So April 4th, check out this chart. If you guys go on Ethereum chart, I mean, we quite literally bought this thing at the Pico top when it tried to rebound. So it was at like 3,333 ETH, I think was the transaction. I think ETH went to like 3,400 and then was down only. But it was 750 ETH at 3,333 ETH. An ETH.
Do you remember what was the floor for the Penguins at the time?
Yeah, I think it was like 0.8, but I had told the community in the Discord, I was like, because they were getting really frustrated. And so I was in there. I had kind of already pleaded my case. I was, in the chat, just trying to get them to know them better. So I think I let them know like 24 hours before. I was like this, or I kind of alluded to it. I said, "Hey, like this is finally coming to an end very soon." But I was like super clear. So I think by like the time we actually announced it, it had like a 1 ETH floor. And then, yeah.
Man, this is a beautiful story and a nice redemption, a beautiful Web3 story. And I have to confess to you, like I was a little bit negatively biased with Penguins, but then I saw what this whole story that occurred, that you guys bought it, and how the community bounced from there. And I have to say I was a little foolish maybe. So yeah, mad respect, and I have completely changed my opinion. And yeah, you guys have done wonderful work, and you're growing the community and the project in every metrics. how what is your recipe for success? What did you bring to the table for this growth? Where did you guys place your big bets in that in that circumstances there?
Yeah, so I think that I'm really thankful because our C-level team are all operators in their own right. So we have a set of core competencies that I think have served us really well here. That's kind of how I assembled the team. I kind of thought, what we needed, where we wanted to go, and who could kind of fill those voids. And so I'm thankful that from an executive side, there isn't anybody in this company from on our C-level suite that couldn't be the CEO of this. And so they kind of run their own departments autonomously. And so we're able to kind of do things at a really high efficient rate. And we're just leaning into core competencies of each individual leading their department, which has been really effective. I mean, at its core though, like if I'm being really, really honest, I think the best thing I ever did was the first 7 days when I took over this project. If I didn't do, and to give you some clarity as to what I mean, I went on this like 7-day sprint where I basically just listened to the community and got all of their feedback for what they thought the vision of Pudgy Penguins should be. And if I didn't do that, I could almost say with 100% certainty that we would not be here today. And that taught me really early on. I actually didn't identify this until after I bought it. So this is not something that I was like really thoughtful about in terms of what are the pros and cons of Web3. But that week told me and showed me why Web3 is a more efficient business model to start companies up versus doing them in a traditional sense, siloed by yourself with maybe a core team trying to build a product. And what that superpower is the hive mind and the input that individuals who are mutually aligned and mutually invested into something, coming together and putting their ideas, to a forum and basically saying, this is what I think we should do. This is not what I think we should do. Here's an idea. What's the feedback? And being able to do that in real time, I think is a superpower. And then I also think, this kind of also happened by accident, but we bought the business with no money in the bank. So we were really, really bootstrapped. And we leaned into our community hard as like resources to help get things done. And so 65% of our team, I think, is hired from within the community, maybe 60% now, because we made a couple of new hires that are outside. But I just want to give like a huge shout out. I say it on every space, but I'll continue to until the day, until, there won't be a day I won't mention it. But the community stepped up in a really special way. And they gave me time. They were patient. The first couple months when we took over Pudgy, nothing happened. And I was just telling them I'm working in the business. I have to stand this up. There's no employee handbooks. There's no payroll. There's no insurance. There's like nothing. And it's just best practice for me to stand up a business in a real way. Like I'm not going to run a bozo shop. And so the first couple months they were patient. They rode with me. They believed, like no one was bullying me. No one was attacking me. They were like supporting, championing the brand, seeing some of the things that we were doing, paying homage. Like this never happens without that group of people being so special. So, at its core, there's a lot of different things that, the team, I believe, is extremely talented. We have a set of core competencies that I believe the space really lacks in terms of talent that know how to do certain things. Marketing and growth is something I think we do really well. I think Peter is an elite creative. I think some of the things he ships are absolutely phenomenal. Like I can obviously give credit where credit is due, and I think credit is deserved in that respect. But at the end of the day, like I am not here without the community. And I think I did a really good job showing them that I care about their input. And I also think that they would say that if I wouldn't have done that, then maybe things would also be different. Because like I made it really clear on day one that this is not my company to decide. I mean, I came in with a vision. Trust me, I had thought of a vision, though I thought the deal was never going to go through. But my vision was not the vision the community wanted. And they made that pretty clear. And there was also some things that I leaned in too hard into the beginning. I think we were just like the whole entire brand in the beginning was all about like love and positivity. That I think that's like a huge part of our brand, but it's not all of our brand today. I think we've kind of shifted and added like a whole fun and like meme and funny type of layer to it, which I think is helpful. But at the end of the day, like this thing has been shaped and curated by the Pudgy Penguin holders. And when I do stuff, and like we don't create volume, we don't go up in floor, but like the community is responsible for all of that, right? Like my job is just to do cool stuff, to set the bar, to trailblaze certain categories and initiatives that nobody's thinking about and that nobody's doing, to put ourselves in a position of power where our greatness is undeniable. But the reality is like why we're sitting the way we are today and why we're getting the respect that everybody's giving us today is because the community has championed the brand in a way that very few communities know how to do. And that success is translated, completely back to them. And so, the most unique thing about Pudgy Penguins to me, aside of the magic and of the IP, is really the community. I mean, these guys, there isn't a community more FUD and battle tested. I can say that unequivocally. I think Azuki would be a second, but at the end of the day, Azuki did not go through the beat down the ways that these guys got beat down, because they got beat down for months and it was like different things over and over. It was always something. It's like every month there was like another fatal blow that didn't kill the thing. And so they just stood the test of time. We will continue to stand the test of time, but why we're successful, why we're here today is really their doing.
I love that you mentioned the community and how tied your team and the community is to the project and co-creating it basically. Um, that brings me to my next question, which is sort of reoccurring. I have fun asking different guests this same question, which is uh, in Web 2, we see people excited about technology, but they are not as big of fans and emotionally connected as in Web 3, where we see people tattooing PFPs on their body, and we see people identify with basically the Web3 brands on another level. Not only it becomes their identity, but also emotionally. Why do you think is that?
Yeah, so there's one thing that Pudgy Penguins kind of championed, and I think every penguin would admit this, like all credit to Joey Moose. But I am my penguin and my penguin is me is a real thing. And I think one thing that makes our community really interesting is there's a large subset of group within the huddle that is just like tied to their penguin. Doesn't matter if it goes to 1,000 ETH floor, they won't sell it. I mean, maybe everything changes at 1,000 ETH floor, but we have like an ethos that I think is aligned with some of the behaviors that you kind of see in the space, which is just like, this is everything to a lot of people in this group. Like we all trade NFTs, we all partake in other ecosystems and communities. But there's something about this group specifically, this project specifically, that I think ties people in a way that I think is really, really unique. And so we've been getting tattoos. It seems like the higher the floor price goes, the more tattoos we get. But I think beyond that, it's just one of those things where, unlike I think there's a couple groups and communities in the space that kind of fall into this ethos. But this is more than just, hey, a trade or a flip. Obviously, some people are in that for those reasons. Like this is a lifestyle. This is friendships. This is family. This is, alignment of values. I think people underestimate the best communities transcend the trading aspect of it. And though I think there's a huge angle and a huge community within the Pudgy Penguins where that's like the focus and that's the priority. Like, I'll tell you something that I've never really talked about, but when I first bought this thing, we went from 1 ETH to 4 ETH, and then we went all the way back down to 1 ETH. And I'll just be honest, I was sweating. I was like, my God, we just round tripped the whole thing. But they weren't attacking me. They weren't penalizing me. They weren't putting me on a stick and rioting. They like, because to them, at least this was my perspective, obviously market conditions were bad, so it wasn't like, Pudgy Penguins was sucking and everybody else was doing well. I think everyone was sucking at the time. But to them, like, their penguin transcended floor price. And I think that's really cool. Like, I think if this space is going to win, more communities need to transcend the floor price. And when that happened, I remember thinking about it. I was really down. I was like upset because at this point, I felt like we were starting to do things that I thought were impactful and showed a lot of effort. And I didn't feel like we were getting some of the credit. But like, I remember distinctively thinking like, oh, wow, like we kind of just round tripped this whole move and no one's antagonizing me. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I've been in a lot of NFT communities and I'm like really thankful that they're not doing this to me. And I remember that night, I'm like, I'm going to step this thing up 10 notches. And 2 days later, the whole thing just rebounds and it's been like up only ever since. But, just to kind of lean into the point that I'm trying to make is, when it comes to attaching yourself to an IP or to a project, I think Pudgy Penguins is up there with the top of the top where it comes to like, hey, this NFT, this penguin, this Pudgy Penguin, this identity of mine is more than just, something that is dictated and excites me based on floor price. And so I think this is it's a really interesting observation, at least from the Pudgy Penguin side.
Oh man, I can really relate to that, and I think every founder in who has an NFT project since 2020 and onwards, and they experience this up and down. At some point, they definitely felt that despair and that stress. But yeah, good communities help. Um, take the stress and the pressure off the team sometimes, and yeah, keep everybody cool and into the good vibes, and we're moving on because yeah, the industry moves on every day, whether we are ready for it or not. So I think it's a beautiful mess where everybody is involved, and everything is progressing, and in the end everything works, right?
Yep.
So what are your future plans now? What is exciting, and what should we look forward from the Pudgy Penguins?
Yeah. So I'm super excited to be in 2023 because I think this is the moment that I'm going to make it so evidently clear this year that there's one person who's transcending and permeating into the real world, and there's going to be one clear winner. And I know unequivocally it's going to be Pudgy Penguins. I mean, my superpower is around product, and we have multiple lines of amazing product that I know people are going to love. That I'm going to do what I do best, which is blow this thing up. And when the world sees these Pudgy Penguins across every state and country and continent around the globe, it's all going to come back to this story, which is the greatest comeback story in Web3 and probably will end up being one of the greatest comeback stories of all time. And 2023 is there's no excuses for us, like from a Pudgy Penguins team side. everything that we've done, we've gotten through, I think, at the worst of it, right? Like, we've been able to tackle a tidal wave that I think was a really bad hand that we were dealt when we took this over, which was just like whole market collapse and black swan events that you just wouldn't even think would have happened. And I spent 9 months developing product lines and product SKUs. And that stuff takes a lot of time to just ship and manufacture and mold. And now we're getting at the end of that development process. And now 2023 is the year for Pudgy Penguins of brand awareness and shipping really amazing shit. And so not only on the physical product side, I'm really taking credit away where credit is really due, which is Lorenzo and the Penguineering team have been building 3 really amazing industry-changing products, in my opinion. And these products will see the light of day in 2023. And that with the and they've been working on that since, some of these products Lorenzo's been working on since day one, at least 6 months of development for the other 2. These things are finally going to see the light of day, and we're going to ship a ton of physical products, which is our teams at its core, our number one core competency. It's what we know how to do best. And so I know unequivocally I'm going to be able to put that product in places and in the hands of people that are just going to champion and promote and create awareness around our brand. And then on the technical side, I think the stuff that Lorenzo's doing is really going to change the landscape of the industry. And I really believe that. And this is our first time speaking. And for those of you guys listening, some of you guys have heard some of this stuff before. But we're at a moment in time where, in the past, there was, I make really data-oriented and analytical statements. And so if I didn't feel like these things weren't true, I just wouldn't say it. I.e., the first 5 months of Pudgy Penguins, I was relatively mute because I think there was less to brag about because a lot of the stuff that we were building. But I can say unequivocally, based on what I've seen and somebody who has a really good finger on the pulse as to what everyone's doing, what everyone's shipped, I think the stuff that we're doing is really going to change a lot. And so that stuff comes relatively soon. I mean, that's not far away. I think the first one, comes in 8 weeks probably. And so I think it's going to be an interesting moment. And I want everyone to hold me accountable. And I know that this time next year, when we're speaking about Pudgy Penguins, people will be speaking about it in a very different light. I think it's nice because now finally people are realizing that Pudgy Penguins is a blue chip, which they've always been. So that feels good. But I think the next 12 months, I want people to realize that we're an unequivocal top 3. And then the 12 months after that, we make the move for the top 1. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. But 2023 is that push.
That's exciting. We will be there to record the success of Pudgy Penguins for sure. Maybe we make a cover. What do you think, Dudley?
Let's do it.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I would like to say thanks everyone for listening. If you have any questions, now is the time. Raise your hand and we will pass on the mic for a couple of questions. Hello, Calf. How's it going, my man?
Hi, guys. Afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad. So I take it that I'm heard well. The audio's okay on my end.
Yeah, all good. We hear you nice.
Cool, man. Great. So I tuned in kind of at the end here. So I might be asking something that you guys already tackled. But I'm curious about Luca. First of all, awesome job speaking, and I really love what you're doing. It's so cool to listen to someone who has like a clear vision of where they're going to take their NFT brand. It's really fun hearing you, and yeah, I feel very comfy being a holder. What I'm curious about is your like, how do you view demand accruing to NFTs? Like, I remember you and Gabe Layden both say that it's about attention. And the more people that basically look at the NFT, the more odds there are that someone's going to want to buy it out of whatever, some sample of people. But NFTs in general, like since these are collectibles, how do you view the demand, not just the attention, but the demand within the attention accruing to the original collection and the derivatives, like and the ROGs and the little pudgies? Like, how do you view that, generally speaking?
Yeah, I'm gonna post a shitty illustration today on my Twitter feed because I drew it on the flight yesterday, and it's gonna kind of break down this exact point. But to explain it, and then you can visualize it in a couple hours. But to explain it, I'm a firm believer that, or at least I look at this from a funnel perspective. And so on the bottom of the funnel, you have this finite resource. In this case, you have 8,888 Pudgy Penguins, right? There's only going to be 8,888 of them. And if I can create a user base of, let's say, 10 million people that consume our content, that consume our products, that are familiar and aware with our brand, that follow our brand, then I would assume that maybe 1% of those people become really extreme fans and participate in fandom, right? Which is just taking, the love for something to a whole another level. And I would assume that of those 100,000 people, that they would want to participate and own a Pudgy Penguin because it's the first edition. It's the first origin of this IP and this brand that has superseded the NFT space and now is something that is attracting people from a content perspective, from a product perspective. And because you have this finite resource that can't be changed in quantity, eventually you're going to have a supply moment, right? I look at it like, to me, the NFT at its core is a digital collectible. I think you hit it right on the head. But why is it better than a regular collectible? Well, for a lot of reasons. I think the first reason is there's no inauthenticity issues. You know if something is a Pudgy Penguin, if something is a Bored Ape. It's unequivocal, right? Just go to OpenSea, find the blue check. It's a legitimate product. The second one is the friction of buying and selling is removed. So physical collectibles, it's a real pain, right? Like to sell a first edition Pokemon card gives you anxiety of the utmost nature for 24 hours while it's getting shipped back and forth. The insurance is crazy. And then, on the other side of that, when that person receives that card, there's still the chance that it's inauthentic, that it's not a legitimate first edition Pokemon card, for example. And so you have this vehicle, which is the NFT, that removes those two problems, which I think are really big problems. And then there's also extra pros, right? So in our situation, there's the ability to monetize and license. And so you look at the floor of a Magic Gathering card, for example, the hollows, which would be kind of considered the creme de la creme, are $100,000 a piece. You look at basketball cards and football cards, they sell millions of cards every single year, but the rare ones are worth an exorbitant amount of money. And then you have things like Pokemon cards, where I would argue the first editions, the floor on the first edition Pokemon cards are probably worth, I don't know exactly what the floor would be, but $500,000, let's say. And so my thesis here is if I can create a brand that people love and I can get a user base of, let's say, 10 million people, then I know on the low end, and 1% is conservative, but I'll say 1% of them want to engage and participate and consume the NFT, right? Well, obviously there might be some barriers to entry, but 8,888 is not that many. It actually could happen pretty quick. And so in between this funnel, where at the top you have brand awareness, and it trickles down to this finite resource at the bottom, and in the middle you have to educate. So this is one thing that we haven't done yet, and I'm not going to do until I think we're really, really big, because I don't want to kind of kill our audience until we've really developed a loyal base. But at some point during this process, educating people on Web3 and NFTs is going to kind of play a huge part in terms of turning that top of the funnel brand awareness into consumers. And so this vision is going to become a little more clear. Actually, in a couple days, there's going to be something that we're going to do that is going to be an interesting angle, but I want people to think, when they see it, I want you to think mass adoption. And I'll explain it when it happens, and we'll kind of talk about it and explain how we kind of came to some of the decisions that we're making, that we're going to make. But my whole thesis is top of the funnel, create brand awareness. That's my top priority. Because I think with brand awareness, everything kind of raises the entire ship. Bored Ape did brand awareness at the perfect time in the best way, right? Like they put on a master class in brand awareness where they basically took, these influential figures that are credible, that have trust, and then turned them into digital billboards for their brand through the PFP. It was a master class in marketing at the right time, right? Created huge awareness. And so my goal is, it's a little bit harder in a bear market, but create a huge top of the funnel of awareness and educate them and bring them to the bottom of the funnel, which is this finite resource. And so obviously that'll be Pudgy Penguins. Because we have little Pudgies, it's a lower barrier to entry. So people who can't afford the bigs will go to the littles. And then eventually the moat will rise. Now, there's also some things that I can't talk about, but maybe in about 2.5 months, we'll also see something in how I look at value accrual a little bit differently. Because I'm a firm believer that I want to make a brand that makes billions of dollars a year in revenue. And how do you translate that revenue to holders through the form of a real transaction, which I believe that narrative and that story, I think is really going to shake up the space, the way that we're going to do it and the way that we're going to ship it. Because I think just how it's positioned is going to be really interesting. And I think that's also going to attract the current Web3 user base into the ecosystem, because I have a thesis, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kath, but you have a one-of-one Rhett guy. So I know you're in the space and you care, because Rhett guy is awesome and his art's amazing.
I don't own it. Just so just butting in to say I do not own the thing, but I love it. That's why I rep it. And it's CCO, man.
Oh, well, there you go.
Like
there you go. CCO. Well, it's a great piece nonetheless. So I know you have taste.
Yes, sir, thank you.
I'm a firm believer that when we do the things that we're going to do in the real world, create that awareness, create a real brand, I have a belief, and I hope this is the case. I hope for Web3's sake this is the case. But I think when people see what we're going to do, people are going to be caught in an inflection point, and they're going to be asked to make a decision. And what I mean by that is, over the next year, I am extremely confident Pudgy Penguins' greatness is going to be undeniably clear. And with that clarity, I believe that NFT traders and the current people and the current users in the ecosystem are going to ask themselves, they're clearly doing everything for their holders. Everything they do is try to accrue value back to them. They're creating a brand that transcends Web3, that has a user base that has gone from 0 to millions over the course of 18 months. And one is evidently going to be here for a long time. And when we make that clear, I believe that the current base, the current ecosystem is going to make a decision. And they're going to say, wow, these guys against all odds did it. And these other projects that I've invested tons of money in, that have tons of money, have done nothing. And so why would I continue to support the people who are doing nothing, that are not pushing the space forward, that are not taking holders' input, and that are not listening to the group and trying to build something that not only transcends value to the brand and to the company, but to the people that have believed in that company first? I believe the current ecosystem today, regardless of if it gets any bigger, is going to see what we do over the next 12 months, and they're going to make a decision. And their decision is going to be, I don't want to support the guy who's had 18 to 24 months to make this happen, and they still haven't made it happen. I rather support the one that's clearly winning. And so my job this year is to make that path to victory really clear. And I believe beyond the 10 million brand awareness funnel that I'm thinking just in the Pudgy Penguins world, I believe that as we succeed in the initiatives that we're planning to succeed on and that we're pursuing, that the current ecosystem of, let's say, 1 million people is going to think to themselves, well, why would I hold X NFT when the growth and success is not as evident or not as clear as Pudgy Penguins? And then, so now I have one funnel, which is my 10 million people that are familiar with the Pudgy Penguins brand, which is kind of what I work towards every day. But then I have this other funnel of just Web3 users and power users that I think are going to see the success on the other side of the funnel and be like, whoa. I mean, one is clear. This guy bought it for $2.5 million. Everything he's doing is working. I mean, not even just on assumption, the data shows it, right? The views, the followers, the product, the sales, the tech. And they're just going to make a decision. And then once you get that other funnel really participating, I think is when you have a moment where it's just like complete supply shock and you just can't get a Pudgy Penguin, right? Or at least that's how I'm thinking about it. And so that's kind of my approach. One is, the one on the right, which is the Pudgy Penguins brand awareness side, is really what we work for and work towards every single day. And then the other side, the Web3 side, I think will just come. It's not something that I'm forcing. I've learned that chasing the Web3 audience is kind of a means to an end. But I believe they will come if you show them that you're better. And I believe you can show them that you're better by growing the other funnel, which is the brand's funnel, the brand's brand awareness, right? Versus trying to chase just this same subset of users that are just like, have incredibly low attention spans and patience tolerance, right? Like they're really not true brand believers. They're really profit maxis. And I believe they will come, but our focus is really on the major brand awareness funnel. That's not to mean that I don't think that the Web3 users will get it. I think from a long-term perspective, it's going to be very clear, especially over the next 12 months. I mean, the next 12 months is going to be undeniably clear. If it's not clear to you today, I understand, like, more power to you, but it will be undeniably clear, January of 2024. And when it's undeniably clear, I would assume that NFT users are smart and smart money makes smart decisions, and that they'll compare Pudgy Penguins and they'll compare the rest and they'll say to themselves, well, one has superseded every expectation. One has created tech that has pushed the space forward in ways that most people aren't even thinking about. One has gained a user base and a following that is just like not even comparable to anybody else, which I think we're already doing. And then one is creating product and experiences that just, why hasn't anyone done yet? I mean, there's plenty of NFT projects with 50, 80, $100 million in the bank. And when I make that clear, I think the two ecosystems will collide, and that's how I envision this thing, getting to number one. It's just that metric and that combination of things.
Awesome.
What is your approach towards new collections and increasing issuance? And this seems to be something that sort of makes traders reluctant to hold. What do you think about it? How are you guys approaching this puzzle?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because we kind of inherited things that, somebody who told me, they were like, we were talking attention, and I was another founder in the space, and they were like, some of the best way to get attention is to add airdrop NFTs. And they were like, you inherited little pudgies and rods. You're kind of exhausted there. And for the short term, he's right. Like, it's just a simple math. I mean, the NFT side is really just simple math. It's the more scarce the resource, the better. The more abundant the resource, the worse. I mean, and you will crush the whole thing if you just bring more NFTs into the ecosystem. If I bring another NFT into the ecosystem, I'm going to buy it, right? So I'm going to buy an existing community, so it's not going to dilute, and I just have to figure a way to how that would benefit Pudgies. Again, long ways away from that. I'm not going to divert my attention until I feel like every Pudgy Penguin is just unbelievably ecstatic beyond their wildest dreams. Or two, Pudgy Penguins is doing so well, and little Pudgies are doing so well, and rods are doing so well that the barrier to entry is just too high for new entrants. And we do something that, brings new people into the ecosystem. Those are the only two times you're going to do it. And if you do it any other time, you kill the whole thing. And we've seen it time and time again. I mean, how many times do we have to see it? You see, if I was in this to make a quick 10, 15, 20 million bucks, okay, like that would be my plan. But like, that's not that's not what I'm doing this for. Like this transcends a lot of that. And unfortunately, a lot of the founders in the space, where I think things have gone so wrong, is 10, 20 million bucks is a lot of money for people. And it's a lot of money for me too, don't get me wrong. But like this to me means more to me than some sort of monetary value. Like there's a lot more personally for me than making some amount of money that doesn't really move the needle. And so
I can for sure relate to that. I was saying with Dudley, we say so many times that what we do at Redlion is our life's work, because all our experiences are personal, but what we do on the blockchain will stay forever and will definitely outlive us. Since you started, have you started feeling like that sort of responsibility, that this is my life's work at the end, not just a business?
yeah, this is totally what this has evolved to. I mean, this has evolved. I mean, I'll speak for the team on this one, and I think that we're all aligned. This has all evolved us in ways that we never could have imagined. I mean, this to me has shifted so many things, but our purpose, and this was kind of the thesis coming into this is like, we want to set the bar in an industry that we believe is going to be the future. And this is, to me personally, it might sound a little strange, but like this is a legacy play for me. Like I want this to be the first iterations of this new chapter where it's like, okay, I dominated direct consumer, I dominated consumer products, and now we're building the world's first tech IP company that is going to reshape how IP companies are made for the rest of history. And how do we do that is like really the goal that we're trying to accomplish. I mean, this to me is just so much of a competition, and I just want to win. I just want to say that we came into this with exponentially less than everybody. We bought this thing and we beat everyone. I want that so bad, and it might sound a little egocentric, but I'm just being honest. Like I just
No,
want
I
that more
love
than
it. Be
anything.
honest. Yes, yes, it's good. I love the confidence. Just don't apologize for it. Hey, Kalf, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, hi, thank you for letting me speak again. I have three or four things I want to say. They're going to start general and then get more granular. Feel free to not answer any of them or answer them, up to you. Just curious, and I'm going to be quick, guys. Don't worry, I'm not going to ramble on. Firstly, I'm very optimistic about you, Luca, and you're a great speaker, and you seem to have high integrity. And I hope that you keep doing it because you're going to reach really high heights. Like I see some crazy future for you. I don't know. I can't wait to see what you're going to do in your 30s, 40s, 50s. So I hope that you always pick the side of integrity over money. Although money is great, like let's enrich ourselves, but let's do it while spreading goodness in the world. That's the first thing. Second thing is I have just general questions for you about like trading, if you're willing to answer, if the hosts are gracious enough to let you answer it anyway. How do you think about dumping an NFT that you still believe in, but is going down in price? Like, do you think, I know that you had a really good trading career too with the Pudgies and prior to buying them. So I'm curious how you think about things like that. And the third question is, what low key book do you recommend that people may not know about, but that would give us the greatest insight into like reaching success and really outpacing ourselves in terms of like passing our own expectations, just doing really great in life, financially or otherwise, especially financially though, because I'm a nurse. So I'm just trying to make it in this world, man. I want to do it with high integrity. But if you have any like low key books that you could recommend in that regard, I'd appreciate it. And thank you for letting me talk, guys.
No, that's a good, both two questions. I think regarding the trading one, I mean, this has plagued everybody, including myself, but everybody knows how to trade well is the crazy thing. Nobody sticks to the plan. And this is just like, no matter what you're trading, have a plan. You're either coming into something and you're taking the 5-10 year bet, or you're not. And there's price targets in which you consolidate and, take profits and, take out your initial and let the rest ride. Like there just has to be a plan. And everybody gets either so emotional in either which direction. You just have to know what your intent on buying something is before you buy it. And that is the key, right? Like that is where I think so many people mess up, is just like everybody knows the plan and everybody knows how to trade like a good trader. right? Like, I mean, the rules are very basic. I mean, and you can study different strategies. It's really when you let emotions get into play and you either become too emotionally attached or too emotionally detached. I think it's, you just have to have the plan and stick to the plan. I mean, the best trades I've ever had, I just stuck to the plan. And that's the key. And so that would be my advice there. You know, in terms of making money, a book that I read recently that I just really liked for just first time entrepreneurs. He's the only Instagram guru that I respect that I just think hits it right on the head every single time. It's a guy named Alex Hormozy, and his book Million Dollar Deals, or I think that's the name. I'm 99% sure it's Million Dollar Deals. I'm trying to look for it. I have it near my bed. But and I just think his content on Instagram is phenomenal. Nobody's even coming close to Alex. And he's the real deal Holyfield. I'm very familiar with a lot of these internet entrepreneurs. I've been able to intermingle with a lot of them. It's all a phony, just like upsell on an info product. That's not Alex Hormozy. Alex Hormozy is bona fide the real deal. And every piece of content he ships, I'm just like, ugh, free game 99. Alex Hormozy on Instagram, consume all of those reels. Those reels will give you a Wharton level education for free. And his book, I think it's Million Dollar Deal or Million Dollar Offer, is just a phenomenal book for first time entrepreneurs and people just getting familiar with, because entrepreneurship is just deal making. It's a whole bunch of relationships and a whole bunch of deal making and a whole bunch of empathy and a whole bunch of, you know, knowing when to be decisive, knowing when to know that somebody is screwing you. I just really love that. And knowing how to make the right offer. It's like key. It's like really a couple things. There's nothing IQ about entrepreneurship, truly. It's really just all EQ and understanding, you know, when to adjust, when to pivot. And so that book, I think, goes over a lot of that stuff, and it's an easy read. It's very straightforward. Some of these books that I'm reading just get way too complex, and I'm just like, oh, can't read this. And so I think that would be my recommendation on trading and also my recommendation on that book.
Thanks, man. Have a great one.
You too.
All right. Thank you. I don't know if you have any closing statements before we go. You have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for hosting this space. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everybody listening for tuning in. We've got, I would say, a big week, but honestly, it's a big next 12 weeks. So if you're a Pudgy Penguin holder, the next 12 weeks are going to be exciting. So support, like, retweet, comment, a GIF, something. Support where you can. You'd be surprised. It means more and impacts us more and does more for the community and for the project, more than you can actually imagine. So looking forward to showing the world what we've been working on. It's an exciting 12 weeks ahead, and I think every week we got something. So it's going to be fun.
12 weeks, that's more or less 3 months. So maybe during the year, I would like to invite you again whenever you feel like it, or you have something new and exciting to share and hear what you are up to at the time.
Yeah, you'll know when we're doing some of this stuff. So just reach out to me, and you were a great host. So
for sure. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And thank you, everyone, for coming in today and listening. We have a very interesting interview this Wednesday, the day after tomorrow, January 25th, with Dandelion or Dandelion, depends how you want to pronounce it. And we just published Gazette 123, just $25 for 2 NFTs. Check it out. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a wonderful evening. Bye bye.
Bye bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in.